The world was unkind to Marianne Bachmeier. A child of the 50s in Western Germany, her father was an alcoholic, overbearing authoritarian whose drinking made him aggressive. She experienced and suffered her parents' divorce, and according to her, her stepfather was tyrannical. Such circumstances ultimately led to her mother kicking her out of the house, and Marianne, therefore, went forward to look for love in all of the wrong places. By the time she was 18, she had 2 children from 2 different men, both of whom abandoned her. This led her then to give these children up for adoption. Eventually, she had her 3rd child, Anna, whom she chose to keep, and she received Anna into her home along with all of the responsibilities and the hardships that come from single motherhood. Now, I imagine that all of this pain was raging in the background of Marianne's mind on March 6, 1981, as she raised her Beretta in a packed courtroom, shooting Klaus Grabowski 7 times in the back. This was a man who kidnapped her daughter Anna, violated her, and then strangled her to death. It was not enough that the world took Marianne's innocence and her childhood. Now it took her child too. And for Marianne, this was just too much. And although Klaus was in the hands already of the civil authorities, Marianne chose to take justice into hers. And few in the public eye at the time blamed her. I mean, would you? The problem with vigilante justice, as satisfying as it seems, is that it fails to see the whole picture. In its simplest form, one could say, Klaus lost his life because he took life, and that's fair. But see, life is just never that simple, is it? What suffering, I wonder, brought Klaus to this point in his life that he would make these kinds of evil choices? What plans did God have for his soul? Could Klaus have repented and found Jesus if given more time, the time that God had actually allotted him in jail? After all, before his court even resolved, because it never had a chance to, he had already confessed to all of his crimes with total honesty. And so the answer to these questions we'll just never know. When Jesus says, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, it's not, and I want you to hear me, it's not him asking that we deny justice. He's asking that we make room for it. Because real justice requires consideration of a much wider scope. It demands knowledge that we don't really possess, like the interior life of our enemies, the purpose and the plans that God has in this messy situation. It demands knowledge of potentiality, of what could be. How might God redirect this pain to my and this person's redemption? What good could God achieve if given the space to do so? And just when our hearts feel ready to dismiss these questions as tedious and irrelevant, remember what Jesus said. The measure with which you measure will in return be measured out to you. And I hope when my time comes and I stand before the awful judgment seat of God, that he will take all of these questions into account on my behalf. That brings me to a different Mary. A long time ago, another teenage Mary suffered a very difficult life. She was born into poverty, and she lived in an austere town. Those in power hated her people, and her own people were divided among themselves, and her future was bleak. As a woman, she was a second-class citizen and had very little rights. Eventually, her husband left her a widow. But of all the things she endured, there was one thing that she prized above all else, one good thing she had in her possession, and that was her son. And in this profound act of generosity, she gave her son to the world. But the world spit on him, slapped him, scourged him, and killed him. He was called horrible things and given a cursed man's death despite his innocence. And standing there underneath Jesus' cross, this Mary listened to her own people taunt and mock him at the moment of his greatest pain, while at the same time Jesus, hanging there, was praying for them. Until finally he looked down at her and he asked her, "Would you be their mother?" He asked her not only to love her enemies, but to receive her enemies as sons. Certainly an impossible request. Surely this is the moment that she's going to raise her Beretta into the air. And who would blame her? But she doesn't. She says yes to love. And because of that, every one of us is here today. I am grateful to this crucified man and that heartbroken mother that they loved me when I had proven myself their enemy by my sins. And all of us owe our present and our eternity to this love, as do all the saints, including St. Paul, who was a murderer. What Jesus asked of Mary, what he asked of Marianne, and what he's asking of all of us is that we give that same chance to others and just leave the rest to God. And that's possible because we recognize that real justice is bigger than us. It's bigger than our pain. It's bigger than our ability to see all of the pieces involved. And in that way, we can leave justice to those who are duly appointed to serve it, whether that be civil authorities or, in their ineptitude, God himself. And for those who do not repent, who abuse the opportunities given to them, God's justice will come in this life or in the next. St. Teresa of Avila recounts the time that she attended the funeral of a sinner who refused to confess his sins at the end of his life. And as they began to lower his casket into the grave, she looked up and saw a multitude of demons standing around the casket. And to her horror, she watched as they laid hold of the man, tormented him, and dragged him by hooks down into hell. Such are the stakes that we all face. But think of it this way: your prayer and your patient acceptance of trial might be the one thing standing between your enemy and that fate, just as the pierced heart of Jesus Christ stands between ours.